So I'm not exactly a spring chicken anymore, right? I'm in my early 50s. And I remember the good old days when we had, telephones with wires on them. And then, oh my goodness, technology's exploding. We have wireless telephones. This is amazing. And so I feel like I've been there for the dawn of the information age, right? We live in the information age now. Anything you want to know is available. You can ask Chat GPT something and it's going to give you a really long, eloquent answer. So we're in the information age. I guess the question and maybe the challenge is, where do we get our information from? How do I feed myself? What are the different sources? And so I want to reference a chapter from my handy little book here, right? I wrote this book, Grow Right Now. And there's a chapter in there called Chicken Little. Right? It's like, Chicken Little, what's that all about? And so just a quick story, and it's in the book, is my wife and I, as we're in our early marriage years, and she's pregnant with our first child. So this would have been, around 16 years ago. We're on a date night. We go to the movie theater and we're looking up at all the different options. We're in, downtown Culver City. There are plenty of options. I'm hoping that she's gravitating to the same movies that I want to watch, the typical guy movies of action and blood and guts and something maybe a little violent. That's, for whatever reason, that's what I like. And is she gonna pick romantic comedies? That's usually her go-to. And I asked her, I had my kind of top three, and I asked her, like, okay, so what do you want to see? And she says, I want to see Chicken Little. And I'm like, Chicken Little? It was like the last thing I expected you to want to watch. And I'm like, why do you want to watch Chicken Little? She says, well, all the other movies have something that gets the adrenaline gland going. And I don't want to pass adrenaline on to our unborn son. And I don't want to pass any negative or weird emotions on to my son. So I want to watch something G-rated. I want to watch Chicken Little. And from that moment on, it really made me think, like, what am I allowing into my life? Like, are there unintended consequences from watching a violent movie or something that gets my adrenaline pumping? It really made me think about the stuff that, I'm making decisions all the time, but maybe I should be a little more thoughtful on what I allow into my mind, right? Garbage in, garbage out. I want good stuff coming in and I want good stuff coming out. So how do we take a look, really? How do we unpack this of what we allow ourselves to be exposed to and what really shapes our thinking? I like the analogy that Sebastian Angus came up with when it comes to how do you get your information? And he came up with something called the rule of 5. So for any rep in his office that wants to graduate to the point of running their own branch, they have to go through 5 gates. And one of those gates is, don't be a baby bird. So here's his analogy, like, don't be a baby bird. Well, how does a baby bird get fed? Well, a baby bird relies on mama or dada bird to, you go hunt the food, you go get it, you eat it, you regurgitate that food, I open my little mouth, and then you feed me whatever it is that you went to get. He's like, if that's how you roll, like you have always relied on one trusted source and you don't question that source, you don't go get your own information, you wait for a trusted source to bring the information to you, you're not enough of an independent thinker. In business, you should be challenged plenty of times where, hey, why am I doing what I've always been doing? Is there a better way to do it? Maybe I should go hunt and get the information on a better system for this particular part of my business right now. You have to be an independent thinker. You've got to be curious. You've got to be inquisitive. So I really like that analogy, Sebastian. I think it's fair to say that none of us get our information from the news. We're not recording CNN or Fox News or MSNBC. I don't think any of us are doing that. I think a generation or maybe even 2 generations ago, that's what they did. You're getting your information from your social media feed. And I think that's perfectly fine. Now, you'll get the Fox News stuff on your social media. You'll get CNN on your social media. You get little sound bites. And if you're interested enough in the sound bite, you can certainly get the full footage. You don't have to go too far. You can just type it into YouTube and you can watch the full episode if that's what you want to do. So I think that's how we're all rolling. Now, the question is, well, what is your platform? What app are you using to get your information? My best guess is that most of you use TikTok, and I think that's perfectly fine. I remember years ago when I saw The Social Dilemma, and I saw The Social Network as well too. Interesting with The Social Network, the history of Mark Zuckerberg and how he created Facebook, and that was fascinating. But to me, the most fascinating part is the algorithm behind the app. Like, how does this thing work? Like, since you're not paying, right? Like, you're not the customer, you're the product. The one paying are the advertisers. That's Meta's customer, the people paying big money for the advertising. You are the product, and they want to keep you, the product, on their application and platform for as long as possible. And I found it interesting in The Social Dilemma that if you're clicking on something, let's say left-leaning, they're going to keep feeding you more left-leaning material. And if you click on something right-leaning, well, they'll keep feeding you more of that. And so here you are as a human being talking to your friends and family, and you're like, dude, do you live under a rock? Like, do you not get the news? Do you not get any information? How do you not know what I know? But again, you're being fed something. Like, whatever you're clicking on the most, you're getting more and more, and eventually you're getting nothing but that. So how do you make sure that you control this beast, that it isn't just feeding you whatever it is that it wants to keep feeding you based on your likes and based on your personal algorithm? How do you avoid being a baby bird with the social media sites? I'll share mine. You don't have to agree, and this isn't a tutorial on what you should do. I'm just telling you how I try to control the beast here of social media to make sure that I'm getting a well-balanced feed, okay, between sports, comedy, the news, everything going on in the world around me to help me shape my opinions on things. So I like to use X, formerly known as Twitter. Some of you, when you hear that right off the bat, you're like, Jamie's lost all credibility. X is blank. Okay, I like X, and I'm not judging you if your app that you like is Instagram or TikTok or Facebook. I don't care what it is. I'm just saying I like to use X, and I am very particular about who I'm following on X. So currently, I'm following 47 different people/entities on X, and I'll dive right into this so you can see who I'm following, how I'm trying to form some opinions on things. So let's get into some of the details here. No surprise, right off the bat, the first person I was following on Twitter was Mr. Tony Robbins. So Tony Robbins puts on there, empowering millions to live a life of meaning. You got to love Tony Robbins. Follow the guy. Conan O'Brien, the voice of the people. Sorry, people. I want some comedy in my life. I like what Conan has to write. CNN, so there's my left news feed. Some of you might say, well, Jamie, that's not left. That's not left enough. But I look at it like that's my left feed. Kobe Bryant, I just didn't have it in me to unfollow Kobe. I mean, I love Kobe Bryant. I know nothing's been posted on there for years. I just can't unfollow Kobe Bryant. I'm sorry. I've got Donald J. Trump on there. I've got several politicians, but what I like about Trump, and you'll see soon, I also follow AOC. They post a good amount, right? They're not like a once a week posting kind of scenario. They're a daily posting. I want to hear what AOC has to say, because really her and Trump don't agree on anything. I don't think there's any common ground, and I want to hear what they both have to say, not just all one or the other. I want to hear them both. I've got on there Business Insider. I've got Mr. Elon Musk. I mean, he posts, I don't know how often, probably 20 posts per day. So he's quite active on there. I've got Bill O'Reilly on there. Some of you may love him. Some of you may hate him. Now I've got Chris Como as well too. I've got a right and I've got a left news anchor, and I like them both. I like their personalities. The one plug I'll throw Bill O'Reilly is, when it came to the election, like, well, who's going to win? This one's kind of a dogfight. It's the closest election we've ever had. He called it. He called everything that was going to happen. I mean, he does his homework. He knew the swing states and what was going to happen. He knew how close it was going to be. But if there's anybody that predicted the outcome of the election, it was Mr. Bill O'Reilly. Tim Grover, I want to know how a guy who trains the world's best athletes, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Dwayne Wade, the list goes on. I want to know how he's thinking from a coaching perspective of these superior athletes. I've got Trevor Noah on there, again, another comedian. I've got PBD on there. I think most of you probably follow Patrick Bet-David on one platform or another. I've got the pastor of my church, Mike Fabarez, on there. I've got Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson on there. Robert Kiyosaki, Stephen A. Smith. When it comes to sports, if you're arguing with Stephen A. Smith, you're basically wrong. That's kind of how I look at Stephen A. Smith. I've got Tucker Carlson. Alex Berenson, started following him during COVID because he was the first really to kind of call out some of the things happening with COVID. So I'm like, oh, here's a different voice. What does he got to say? And he's got some credibility in my eyes. Ken Blanchard, Bill Maher, Grant Cardone, who I hear may be running for governor of California. We'll see how that shakes out. I've got Phil Heath, Joe Rogan, the mighty Joe Rogan, Dave Chappelle, who doesn't love Dave Chappelle. I've got Gavin Newsom. Again, he's the governor in my state. Of course I want to hear what he's got to say. I don't have to agree with everything, disagree, but somebody in a position of influence that may affect my life, I want to know what he's got to say. I've got the Joker on there, probably the GOAT of tennis and a great personality, so I always love what the Joker has to say. I've got Dave Ramsey. Now, again, it's a feed. I've got Robert Kiyosaki, who's like, buy Bitcoin, buy as many Bitcoins as you can get your hands on, right? He's all about that. Big crash is coming. And then you've got Dave Ramsey, who's the voice of a conservative money guy. So I want to hear what they both have to say. One says buy Bitcoin, the other says don't buy Bitcoin. One says get rich off other people's money, the other guy says don't borrow a dime. I want to hear what they both have to say. I've got Dr. Jordan Peterson, one of my favorite Canadians. I've got Jedediah on there, was introduced to her from Patrick Bet-David. So I like how she looks at things from a mom point of view. Very interesting. Matt Walsh, David Goggins, probably the toughest man on the planet, David Goggins. Want to know what he's got to say. Not the B. So if I've got CNN as a left feed, Not the B as a right feed. Valuetainment Media, Patrick Bet-David's media company. John Maxwell, go figure. Of course I allow John Maxwell into my life. Robert Kennedy Jr. There's AOC, like I told you. Her and Trump aren't on the same page with anything. What do they both have to say? They both have huge followings. The Babylon Bee, some satire. That's always, funny. Fake news you can trust. That's a funny slogan. Hulk Hogan, I've been following the Hulkster ever since I can remember. I mean, I take my vitamins and say my prayers thanks to Mr. Hulk Hogan, right? Vincent Oshana, PBD Podcast, Chris Como, Vivek Ramaswamy, Mark Spence. I met him at a conference and I'm like, ooh, I like this guy. I like what he has to say. I want to hear more of Mark Spence, so I started following him. Joe Biden, he's kind of gone silent since Donald Trump has come into as our new president, but obviously I was following everything that he had to say, especially during COVID, like what was all happening during COVID, vaccines, vaccine mandates, what's open, what's not open. So I want to know this stuff. I don't have to agree or disagree with anybody. I just want to know what they have to say. Pete Hegseth, Tulsi Gabbard, and of course, with a big election coming up in 2025, I want to hear what both Canadian politicians, I know there's more than two, but I want to hear Pierre and I want to hear Justin as these two battle it out. I want to know what these guys have to say when it comes to my home country of Canada. So that's how I'm using Twitter or X as my information feed. And I'd like to think I've got a well-balanced approach between comedy, politics, world events, local events. So that's how I'm using it. So again, I'm not telling you do the same thing, follow the same people. I'm just saying, hey, you are getting influenced by something. Kind of like my wife talking about, I want to watch Chicken Little because I don't want to pass along adrenaline onto our unborn son. Like, what are you allowing into your mind? Again, you want good stuff coming in, you want good stuff coming out. Just be intentional about it. So you want to make sure you're getting enough of a balanced diet that you can really get the proper mind happening here, that independent mind where you're not a baby bird.